Before I even sit down at the table, I want you to think my brand is so kick-ass that you're already leaning towards hiring me. Marketing is something different to everybody. Some people just think marketing is sales. This shoe that Michael Jordan won, it's got the best technology. They don't care about the technology. They see the 6 championships that Michael Jordan won. They want to be great. That's the story. That's the hook. Now, if you've already graduated, you need to start building a personal brand. You got to think about, what does my resume look like and how does it read? If I don't have a portfolio, I need to build one. I figured the only way to do it is just to swing for it. And if it bombs, or if it's not great, I can iterate and iterate and iterate. As long as I don't quit, it'll never fail.
Yeah, dude, that's so good. The website is live. Now is when the real work starts. While it's never been easier to build a website, the same is also true that it's never been harder to make a website actually work hard for you. Digital ink is never dry. The moment your website launches is the best opportunity that you have to make it effective and drive marketing qualified leads month after month after month. Most marketers are acting blind. They just don't know who's going to their website. They don't have visibility to see what pages, what specific actions, and how long they're spending on each page. All of these are high intent signals of your warmest prospects. Having a good website is the foundation for all of this opportunity. And if you're not investing marketing efforts into it month after month, your most profitable asset is being lazy. If spending time in the weeds, looking through data, and connecting these insights to the rest of your marketing is not your jam, if your website is being lazy, let's have a conversation. Dude, accountability is everything. Like, even with everything we just talked about, just if I have to report to someone that I'm doing something, or if I have to log something, like, that's how the moment you start tracking something is the
extreme accountability.
Yeah.
I remember that was a term you shared with me. I was like, I love that.
Yeah. It's like a Jocko Willink, extreme ownership.
I like that guy's podcast. I've seen him on.
Yeah.
It's funny. I nerd out over like Navy SEAL stories. And like the stuff that they did overseas, and like getting through Bud's training. I'm like, oh my God, those guys are badass.
Yeah. What makes us realize how good that we have it, Like, I think a lot of our problems are first world problems, but they're still real. But yeah, I love Jocko, man. What podcasts do you listen to a lot?
I listen to a few. I listen to a podcast called The Downbeat, and it's a podcast with a bunch of different musicians. Drummer named Craig Reynolds heads it up. And he finds a way to get like the coolest, most popular musicians or up and coming musicians in the scene to get on there and start talking before other people do. And I just love hearing them talk about the industry, the things that they're doing, how broke they are. It's funny, these people you would think were celebrities are like penny pinching to get by because the music industry sucks. So The Downbeat's fun. I really like a podcast called The Pivot. Ryan Clark, former football player. Yeah. So The Pivot's interesting. I really like
Steelers.
They have a bunch of Steelers guys on there, but I love The Pivot. I like watching them kind of get former athletes or current athletes on there and have conversations. And I think sometimes I'll watch. I got to think about this. Sometimes I'll watch podcasts across different genres. I like, I got to think of the names here.
No, even in those two, you've got range, dude. Like music and sports already. I think about every time I ask a lot of more local people about the podcast they listen to, they always bring up Acquired, because both of the founders of that, they were based in Columbus, and it's a top 10 like worldwide podcast now. And they go into like deep dive case studies of just companies. I listened, one of them's 6 hours long. It's about Meta. Both the guys went to Ohio State, and they're like, in terms of Columbus podcasters, they're both 1 to 2 steps ahead of us a little bit.
I gotta check them out. Acquired. Another one that I like is there is a YouTube channel called Hoden-Key. Okay. They're for watches. And I like some of their podcasts and episodes where they have people on and they start going through like watch collections and what, fascinates them about it. I love when people nerd out about stuff.
Yeah.
And when they're passionate about it, because I could know nothing about it and it's going to entice me to want to learn about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Tell it from a mile away too. Like when people are faking it, they're not really genuinely interested in it. Like you can sense that, even if it's not something that I'm relating to or that I listen to. I listen to, we talked about it when we first chatted, is yours and Joanna's episode about like sensory retail. like how niche and nerdy of a topic that was. And that's not like my niche of marketing, but I was like genuinely interested in hearing you guys talk about that because there's so much stuff that goes into it. Like listening to people who are deep in the trenches of something that they're passionate about makes you realize how much goes into something that you didn't previously understand. Like I had no idea that, there were all those, small packaging things and like how they market to you guys and like some of the things in the candle industry even. What about like the niche size of retail like gets you really excited these days? Things like that.
I love when you go to a retail experience and you get to experience something where they're demonstrating it or showing it in real time and they get you to interact with the product. For example, we have a client that we worked with called Saban. Saban is, beauty, skincare, wellness. And when we started doing work with them, we went all over New York and we went to all these different boutiques. And some of these stores would have you wash your hands with their product. Some of these stores would have you, spray on a fragrance and try that and walk around with it. And it just became something that stuck around with you. It was sensorial, yes, but it was something that actively enveloped you in the moment. And you can make a decision from there whether or not the product's for you or not. But it's just fun being able to actually participate. I think that's something that's missing in retail is participation. And getting the people the second they walk in the door to be able to do something fun or cool or be able to turn it down. You know what I mean? There's no harm, no foul if you don't want to do it, but just the opportunity to.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing for marketers to think about is like how you talk about making an impression on customers or on anyone seeing your content, your brand, how sticky like a sensory retail experience is. Like you guys made the example of like some of your most closely held scents and experiences, like things from like years ago. And if listeners can even think about like the way that their parents smelled or like a really fond memory, you're going to remember like how that smelled, ironically. I think that's part of human nature. But are there any like senses or experiences that are really part of your story or pertinent to you?
Well, I'm a fragrance collector.
Yeah.
So I've got 45 bottles at the house. This is like the nerdiest thing. My friends clown on me for this all the time. Some of my friends are like, I'm going over to Max's house. He's got a Macy's in the back room. But regardless, my dad's always been big on it. And so I started collecting quite a few years ago, and the collection has just gotten out of control now. But I've turned it into a little side hustle where I sell portions of my fragrances out online through Reddit or whatever.
What is the most expensive fragrance that you've ever bought?
The most expensive one that I've ever bought? That's a great question. I've got a bottle. The most expensive that I own is something called Creed Aventus Absolute. It's like a $600 bottle. I didn't pay that. The most expensive I've ever paid was about $500 for a bottle called Louis Vuitton Meteor. Now, granted, I buy these bottles and I part them out and sell them. So I get a chunk of my money back regardless. So it's not like a sunken cost, right? So there's a little entrepreneur and hustle in it. You know what I mean? So because listen, I have 45 bottles. I can't get through 45 bottles in a year. I probably couldn't get through those in 20 years. So I take half those and I flip half of it online in portions.
Boom. That's you're giving back to the community right there.
Well, and people can try it before they buy it because fragrance is one of those things you might love something and I might not, or I might love something, you might hate it. And I've learned that as my taste grows, I like more experimental stuff, and that's only turning people off more and more. I wore something the other day, and I had a few people who were like, "What is that? That's amazing!" And I had a couple that are like, "Dude, don't ever wear that again." So I love that.
Well, good, man. I mean, it's a big part of your personality. This is a good thing. At Chute Gerdeman, you guys do a lot of, things pertinent to that. Like sensory retail is a big one. Sort of niche branding things that a lot of people see, but they don't think about goes into. Are there any like projects at Chute Gerdeman? I know we talked about a few last time we chatted that are you really interested in? I know you're going to New York to give a presentation here shortly. Doing some really cool stuff on the auditory side. Is there anything you're working on now at Chute Gerdeman that is consuming a lot of your excitement and headspace these days? We've
got a project coming up with Build-A-Bear, and we're doing a 40,000 square foot store in Orlando, and it's going to be multiple floors, and each level is going to be its own different experience. Think about when you were a kid and you went shopping to like your favorite store. Now, I was a Build-A-Bear shopper when I was a kid. You know, my mom, and I remember my mom specifically taking me there and building a bear, named it Marvin and everything. True story.
Like rub the heart on.
The heart ceremony, everything. It was so much fun as a kid, and now being able to see our team design and develop their largest, most innovative flagship ever created in Icon Park, which is in Orlando. You know, that is consuming a lot of my excitement because I know that when that's built, it's going to be sick. And so many kids and families and people are going to go there and have fun. You know, and Build-A-Bear is another one of those things that it's not just for the kids. You know, so many adults shop there. You know, bachelor parties, they'll go and buy bears there, or bachelorette parties. Or, you know, there was, when we were doing our research, we saw that some women in the Columbus area would go to brunch, and then they would come after brunch after they've had bottomless mimosas, and then they would like make their own like raunchy bears. It's such an amazing, such an amazing thing, right?
I saw side tangent. I saw recently how a lot of marketers are repositioning like traditionally children consumed products towards adults. An example that they use, I can't remember where I heard this, but it was Legos. So the bigger consumer subset of Legos these days is actually skews much more towards like middle-aged, 20 to 30 somethings hobbyists rather than the kids themselves. And that's a good like marketing lesson to learn, is that a lot of times the consumer of your product is not the same person that you're marketing to. So side tangent.
Well, no, actually that's super relevant because we coined that as Cadult.
Yeah.
Right. And the Cadult Cadult is who you're marketing to, because the Cadult's the one with the money. You know, the kid is the benefactor ultimately, and they may want something, but the Cadult has to be able to see the value and see themselves in that product. And a lot of times the Cadult's going to want to be a part of it too. You get a sweet Lego set, you know, for your kid, you're probably going to want to set it up with them and have fun, especially if you're like a Star Wars fan or, you know, a fan of some other type of intellectual property that these brands will carry. You know, we went to Toy Fair. It was crazy, the amount of stuff that we were seeing. Again, not tailored really towards the kid.
Yeah.
Tailored towards generations of users. And I think that they're just getting so much smarter about it. And I think it's cool too, because it's culturally normalizing the fact that as you get older, you can still have fun and whimsy in your life.
Yeah, I think that's cool about what you get to do now, is a lot of times, and this is probably more true of like the corporate giants, and maybe it's a bit of a stereotype, but agency life as a whole, and why I think you guys you have a really good opportunity being slightly smaller, working more intimately with clients, is that when you are a corporate giant, you don't have a lot of times you don't have the visibility and just the insight of what like Gen Z and younger populations, how they interact with products. A lot of times when big level corporate decisions are being made in a boardroom, you're removed from that aspect of it. And when you guys are slightly more leaner, you get to be on that ground level. Like, I imagine you have a different insight. You're more tapped in, plugged into what's going on the Gen Z side in the real world than some of the other people who are more corporate. I'm always learning these days. I'm not as plugged in to like the next generation as I could be, but I'm learning about like looks maxing and like all this other stuff that's going on. And it's cringy when you do it wrong, which is a lot of times is what corporate people do. But when you're plugged into the market, and it's a lot easier for you to provide those insights and actually resonate with something that's a lot more current. So,
well, we try to research as much as we can just to stay, honestly, to stay predictive. That's one thing that I'm really big on, is I just want to be able to see a little bit ahead of the curve so that we can look back and say, oh, we called it or we were wrong. There's nothing wrong with being wrong, because you're not going to be perfect all the time anyway.
Yeah. So you work at Chute Gerdeman now. I want to talk a little bit more about your earlier career in marketing. I would consider you, maybe it's just because we've been connected for a long time on LinkedIn, and then more intimately now that we've had a couple in-person meetings. But you've been in Columbus area for a long time. You've worked at a couple different roles spanning across sales. You're doing a lot of different marketing stuff now. But can you talk a little about your perspective on sales? Because there's always there's a lot of traditional head trash around the relationship and the dynamic between marketing and sales. And you have a unique perspective as someone who's done both, and really kind of maybe having to cut your teeth with that early on. So what are some perspectives on sales that you have now that you're a marketer?
Well, the thing is I'm probably going to get in a little bit of trouble because I think I might have maybe an unpopular philosophy about marketing and sales. So first off, marketing is something different to everybody. Some people just think marketing is sales, which makes me really sad. And the thing that I like to do is when I break down marketing to somebody who doesn't really have a lot of experience in it, I make it always, it's about the story. People are attracted to the story. Or in the case of Nike, they're attracted to the athlete and the greatness of the athlete. They're not necessarily attracted to, oh, hey, this shoe that Michael Jordan won, it's got the best technology. They don't care about the technology. They see the 6 championships that Michael Jordan won. They want to be great. That's the story. That's the hook. So that's what I am always angling for in marketing. Whereas sales is a little bit of a different kind of mentality. It's always about the benefit, the return on investment, and what are you going to get at the end of the day? It could be fiscal or it could be something totally different. So I have this philosophy that, marketing and sales, they have to be interlinked. They have to be connected, right? But marketing and sales are like really good friends, but they're not necessarily family. They are their own thing a little bit. And I think business development in a way is kind of everybody's job. If you can help and you're willing to help, you have to help, especially in the agency space. Business development is everybody's job. But marketing and business development are not the same thing. They got to have their own kind of swagger. Because, if marketing and business development are working the way that they should, marketing can be the thing that's driving a really cool, innovative message and standing for the things that you think the brand should stand for and equipping you with the materials that you need so that when you are explaining the benefits as a business development lead or sales or what have you, you've got the tools that you need and it makes it a lot easier. Because my goal with marketing is to generate what I call preference. Before, let's say, for example, you're interested in my product. Before I even sit down at the table, I want you to think my brand is so kick-ass that you're already leaning towards hiring me. That's what I'm trying to market towards, that storytelling and that excitement and that swagger and that kind of aura around the brand so that I'm not selling you anymore. All I'm trying to do is get you excited, reaffirm that you're making the right decision working with us.
Yeah.
Whereas sales, they're just trying to go after the benefit. And this is what you're going to get in the first year, and this, and you're missing that emotional connection. And especially in design, design's a very emotional sale. You're buying with your eyes and what you feel and what you can touch and what you can experience. So you got to lean even heavier into your heart so that somebody who's sitting down with you for the first time believes that if they're going to spend $500,000 with you for this project, that they're making the right call.
Yeah, dude, that's so good. That was a lot of cool moments there. I agree with a lot of that. And I mean, I would say to my experience too, there'll always be a little bit of a dynamic because I feel like sales is objectively, a lot of people view sales objectively as being more important. And the most overused phrase in sales is to sell benefits and not features. Like, don't talk about like the features of the Jordan shoe that make you jump higher, but to sell like the end result that it'll have on the consumer. I think sales sometimes can take that to its logical extreme to where they view anything that's marketing or brand related as objectively on the feature side rather than the benefit side. And I think good marketing is done in a way that reminds people of the actual benefit and doesn't oversell the features. So,
well, listen, some people call that fluff. And to be honest with you, like this is my marketing campaign against fluff. So if you're watching this, I think fluff is important because that is the emotional hook that's going to connect somebody to your product, right? For example, there's this amazing vitamin company called Ritual out there, and I'm looking at their vitamins, and I'm like, they should really talk about how these vitamins are less about vitamin D and more about live a healthier, longer life. You know what I mean?
Are they SARMs?
They're not SARMs, no. definitely not SARMs. No. But that's the stuff I think about.
I can cut that out.
No, I don't even care. You can keep it.
No, that's a good example. I think there's obviously people at the end of the day, people before purchase, they're thinking about the features. They're putting themselves in that ideal end state, but it's like that hook, like you said, like the fluff, the hook that they see at the beginning. That's what gets you the app. That's what gets the attention that then gets you the at bat. So I think it's like a marriage. You can't have one without the other. But yeah, I think anyone of all the founders, of all the marketers that I've talked to, people who have experience in sales, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, are just so wired to succeed. There's something about facing rejection, doing things wrong, putting out ideas that can either pass or fail in front of an audience that just puts you like head and shoulders above everybody else in a good way. What is your relationship like with failure? Do you have anything that you've done in the past that maybe was a great learning opportunity that, steered your career in a certain way? But what's your relationship with failure like?
I've failed so many times, buddy. I mean, there's times where I remember one time we actually ended up winning this project, but we had a critical deadline. This is the only deadline I can really think of that I missed that was really important in my life. We had a critical deadline with a big grocery brand to respond and, basically send our proposal. And I don't know what happened, but for whatever reason, I just didn't fill out the requirements needed, and we missed the deadline. And, I just sent a really candid message to them about, hey, listen, this is on me 100%. Like, we still would really love to respond and be a part of this project. And we love your brand, asking for a little bit of grace here. And sure enough, they gave us the grace. And I just remember borrowing trouble in my head about that all weekend. And, people on the team were pissed at me, and justifiably so. But that was one of those things where it's like, okay, I learned in that moment to be as honest and straightforward as possible. And if you can't fix it, well, I know what not to do the next time, right? There's been plenty of times where I've learned things where honesty is going to get me out of here much better than any other thing. Like I try my absolute best to not make any excuses about circumstances that I'm in, even if they're things that I can't really control. You talked about this extreme accountability. I think in extreme ownership, I'm a part of a small team. So a lot's going to fall on me regardless, no matter what's going on in my workflow. So I'm responsible for getting stuff done. Sometimes I get stuff done in a way that people don't necessarily want me to. They probably have a better process here or there. But at the end of the day, I'm like, listen, I got to get it done, so I have to do it. So I'm always learning on the fly. But, there's countless things where I've learned where it's like, okay, the best way for me to move forward here and the best way to make sure we're all aligned and we're still cool is to just be straightforward and honest and maybe ask for a little bit of grace. And now I try to do the best that I can to give as much grace as possible too, because we're humans.
Yeah, dude. Now that I'm getting more into the Alex Hormozy sphere, like I resonate with that so much. But Hormozy says something too. It's like the power follows the finger of blame. Like you'll never betray someone's trust. You'll never lose ownership. You'll never be seen as anything other than of high moral value when you point the finger on yourself. I've had similar experiences, not on an in-house basis, but I've had similar experiences like that with our team, where it's like there's a very strong inclination to want to dodge blame, to want to not be the one that's falling on the sword. But it's such a great moral high ground to do that, and the people that do, they always come out on top.
And the other thing to continue on with that is if somebody comes in and they can help, I'm like, hey, listen, I'm going to try and take as much of an egoless approach to that as possible. For example, we're putting on an event right now, and we can talk about this in a minute, but we're putting on an event, and there's so much about event planning that I just didn't know. And the team got together with me and they were like, okay, listen, we're going to do a temperature check here. If you're going to do this event, what are you doing? How are you doing it? What do you want this X, Y, and Z to be? And I realized, okay, there's a lot about this that I wasn't thinking of. And I got to open this up to get as many people in as possible. And that's been great. And I'm learning on the fly about event planning now. And instead of coming at it where it's like, I got it. And it's more so like, okay, I see where you're coming from. Let me just open the floodgates here,
dude. Oh my God. Well, I mean, it's such a hard balancing act between like, one of my core values is like violent action. So the downside of violent action is just this idea. Violent action as a whole is the idea that you move forward and you like learn along the fly, and your solution to not knowing all the small details is just to find out on the way. Because a lot of times when you're stagnant, you don't create the opportunity to learn the things that you would need to do to accomplish the end result. So event planning, great example. There is a million things that go into throwing an event, and I'm going to learn this even more as we start to hold events for marketers and stuff, is that it takes the it takes the formation, the starting, the saying, okay, setting this deadline, getting this in place, in order to bring up the awareness of the things that you didn't previously know about. Because if you don't set the deadline, if you don't commit to doing something in the first place, you're never going to learn all the things that make the second event even better. So yeah, I think anything in person, like a core value of your guys' too, with all the sensory, auditory, branding, the in-person side is just so powerful. I think that's going to be the future. Is there anything in person in terms of maybe marketing events, perspectives, things like that you see as being increasingly valuable in the future, other than just things that are in person as a whole?
Well, I think something that's never going to go out of style is good customer service and experience, and hospitality.
Yeah.
Listen, I think the number one form of marketing is word of mouth. The best way to create word of mouth marketing is to give somebody an experience they want to talk about, right? And in the future, it doesn't matter how much AI or tech or digital or whatever the hell you want to have in your store or your hotel or your restaurant, if the food's not good and the person who's serving the food isn't really nice and respectful, they're not going to want to talk about that restaurant, or they're not going to want to talk about your store if the service isn't great or if the product isn't great, right? So like the things that are table stakes are always going to be table stakes. So like what I worry about for retail is if retailers and brands are starting to get a little too carried away with, the emperor's new clothes, right? The shiny new toy, and not focus on, do I have the right staff here to make people feel welcome? Do we have the right product displays, and make this store as shoppable as possible? Do we have the right customer journey so that they feel like they're being heard and they feel like they're navigating through an experience as opposed to just shopping? And ultimately at the end of the day, are we completing something as a package that is pretty universally ownable and likable towards our brand? Those are the things that are never going to go out of style. So that's what I think about, in terms of, because listen, this technology and AI and everything, it's going to be new, it's going to innovate, it's going to be exciting. Things are going to happen with apps, things are going to happen with your phone or your iPad or digital or, website. But at the end of the day, if you're in a store, the principles are still going to be the same. And that's what I can't emphasize enough, is if you don't hit on those major keystones that are always going to be there, you're only hurting yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great take, by the way. I think anything that's irreplaceable has inherent value. And there's no simulating in real life experience. Like even, we'll see. I mean, maybe we'll see in 10 years how far Zuckerberg gets with his Meta AI land. I don't remember the name for it, but the impression that you're able to create in person is a depth that you cannot simulate anywhere else. And especially I'm sure you've researched Apple. I listened to a whole in-depth podcast about how they curate their in-store experiences. Like they have Disney is another great example. It's so obvious when it's intentional how you curate an in-person experience. When someone feels like they're showing up, they're investing their time into seeing your brand in person, you have an opportunity to create something that is unforgettable. So I see that as being increasingly valuable in the future. And anything digital, you have to really, and not to be like pessimistic on, online conferences, digital brands, things like that, because there is a lot of opportunity there as well. I don't feel like you have as much ceiling there when it comes to really resonating with your customers. And I highly encourage the listeners to, we'll talk about this more too, but Brands and Banter, you've had some killers on the show that have deep experience in retail on the brand side, even more on the entrepreneurial side. But what are some of the lessons that you've learned, like recording Brands and Banter, starting that content motion, and using that as a way to express your own creativity?
I think you used the term violent action.
Yeah.
I love that because, I had an idea, I want to say about a year ago, maybe even less. I said, what if we did this podcast? What if we had a podcast that focused on retail conversations with people that loved retail, or design conversations, or people that really cared about brand, and just we had a little banter about it. And we started putting in motion some identity work for Brands and Banter and some creative, framing for it. And that was so much fun. I've helped manage quite a few different rebrands internally, and that's the brand strategy component of my job. If I had to break it down, my job really is kind of a bit of a triangle. I've got this biz dev side, I've got this marketing side, and a strategy side that, I got to be able to kind of jump between each one. But when we started putting Brands and Banter together, I guess I thought in theory it would be way easier to have a podcast until I realized, oh my God, I got to actually do this. And then I started to have to figure out what platforms we can host on. I had to start figuring out how am I going to edit these things. I had to start figuring out what kind of equipment am I going to need. And I'm still learning as it goes. But I got to shout out, Joanna. Joanna on our team has been instrumental in helping with all that because she had experience in a past life developing a podcast. And, now I feel pretty confident that we'll have a good discussion if we have to do it virtual or in person. Of course, we've got ours coming out here soon, which I thought was a very fun conversation. And, it was great because you and I, we got to chat in advance at North Star, and I get to learn a little bit more of your story. And then we carried that over to how, the digital and the web experience matters and why that might be something that could translate over to retail. But this was stuff that I have all learned within the past year. I've never even done one of those things. And I figured the only way to do it is just to swing for it. And if it bombs or if it's not great, I can iterate and iterate and iterate. And as long as I don't quit, it'll never fail.
Yeah, dude, that's so good. Obviously that hits home with me. Like a lot of listeners know my story starting the show. You may not have the highest opinion of your, the current state of the podcast or the production. I can say firsthand, being on it, the way that you curated the environment, the setting, it was the best podcast I've ever been on, And I can say firsthand from being in the trenches, I edited over 100 episodes of the podcast myself, coordinated everything, and I know that it is a labor of love. But I can tell you also firsthand, like the depth of relationship and the experience that you create, similar to the retail side, creating an unforgettable experience. There is no truer manifestation of that, especially in B2B, where it's less common, than hosting a really great podcast. And I can tell you, you're well on your way there. So I'm excited to see it develop. I'm excited for our episode to come out. And I see nothing but up and to the right for you and Brands and Banter as a whole.
Well, I appreciate that. We're working hard. I'm trying to get like you, my friend.
Yeah. Maybe not the wisest wish, but I appreciate that. So tell me about what is the gist? Tell me about starting that. I know that's more on the physical written side of things, but how does that work into your guys' content strategy?
So the gist is basically a kind of retail news and retail good news platform. Now, first off, it's all about retail optimism. And in retail, it's very easy right now to have like negative opinions and to fear monger about what's going on fiscally, what's going on with store closings, and stuff like that. That's not what we cover. We don't cover that stuff. With the gist, we want to uncover all the good things happening with retailers, with retail experiences, with consumers buying habits and the things that they're interested in, and trends overall. We like to talk about new store openings and new store experiences that might not have been on your radar. We like to talk about new projects that we're designing and building, and ultimately keep the people that are interested in what's happening in retail in the know, as we call it. So we'll develop full trend reports on what's happening in grocery, in QSR, in drive-through, and we'll share it for free. You just sign up, we'll give it to you. And we want to just have these people in our network that are really engaged and interested in the content that we are really passionate about, because this is our livelihood, and it's really done a great thing. It's been a great thing for us in our industry because, we've got over 2,000 subscribers, and, retail design and our specific industry is really small. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, it was the #1 retail design podcast in the U.S. Or not podcast, newsletter. Now, granted, there's not that many retail design newsletters in the U.S., right? So we're not fighting against too many.
Audience of one, baby.
But, that's the thing. It's like you said, we're kind of an audience of one, and we're definitely an audience that focuses on retail optimism, which is the opposite of what other people are doing, trying to get clicks. Put in the headlines of negativity and things that are going on. Listen, you can't control that. Let's build off of that and do something cool, fun, and innovative. So, we've got our newsletter we publish every month with 4 to 5 different pieces of brand new content, including Brands and Banter. So we'll have a new episode that goes live each month there, as well as, research, insights, articles, things that we develop. and content that we think is stuff that you should know ahead of time. Again, I really place a big emphasis on being predictive. I want to be able to see ahead of what's going on. And again, if I'm wrong, that's fine. I have no problem being wrong. I'll just laugh with you.
Yeah.
But if I'm right, I'm laughing because I called it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing that I really, and I look back on some of our insights, and we've called it time and time again on consignment and reselling. We called it on a lot of sustainability efforts and what brands we're going to get into and start evolving towards. And now we're investing a lot of time in what we think is the next form of accessibility, which is auditory, and how that will start kind of coming together towards retail and why retailers should be thinking about that.
Amazing, dude. Tell me a little bit about that. What research have you done on the auditory sides of things? What exciting things do you have to share about that?
Well, we talked about it a little bit earlier. We've got a big event coming up here soon, June 5th in New York City. So anybody that's watching, if you're in the New York area, come and hang out with us June 5th. It's about noise in retail, and it's about auditory accessibility. And our whole goal is to totally change the way people look at accessibility in retail. For example, we spent an entire weekend going to different malls across Columbus, and we started taking decibel meters, trying to understand how loud are these stores actually. Some of these stores were coming in at like 93 decibels. We went into an Aritzia, and by the way, for those at home, 93 decibels is like 2 or 3 decibels away from being at a concert. So imagine working at a concert 8 hours a day, multiple times a week. You're going to start losing your hearing. You're going to start having tinnitus, and you're going to start having things that are literally affecting you. And retailers have a really, really hard time keeping people on their team. So labor retention's an issue. Now, if I had to go work at a concert every day and I had to deal with a customer that wasn't really friendly to me, and I didn't have the most flexible work hours, and I didn't have a great lunch hour, you think I would want to stick around either? Probably not. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get these folks that are retailers and brands to understand that auditory accessibility is a conversation nobody's having. And it's a very noisy space to walk into every day if you're not thinking about it. Like, think about going to a Starbucks or a coffee shop, how loud those machines are.
Yeah.
Imagine sitting next to one of those machines for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
You would leave work drained, and you had to talk over customers. We talked to people from Apple, and they said, listen, we talk over customers here all day. Our voice is getting shot by the time we even make it home. So now our goal is just to get these brands to think about auditory accessibility as a form of a way to make your employees' life better and the customer's life better, so that they're not walking into a concert-like environment, or they're not walking into a place that feels harmful to their health or just annoying or irritable. Because there's so much research coming out now about how numbing sound can be. I used to ride motorcycles. I don't know if you've rode motorcycles or anything like that.
Not yet, no.
Well, if you ever do, you're not supposed to ride long distances because the wind and the sound can fatigue you really bad because it's beating up your eardrums. And when you get off a motorcycle, you feel way more exhausted than your body really actually is, because your ears have taken just that brunt load of 65 mile an hour winds for however long you just rode. It's the same thing like working in a retail environment. You know what I mean? If you're working at Aritzia and it's 93 decibels every day, I can see why somebody would want to get in and get out of there.
Yeah. Well, I can say, firsthand, like, hearing is important. It's one of those things too where you. It's a cautionary tale because you value it immensely more when you don't have it. And that's the risk you run with these things, is that when there's unforeseen downsides to the way natural human environment currently is, that's where the biggest consequences come. Seeing it with the obesity epidemic, we saw it with smoking. Dude, like, health is important. And if you can't bring the best side of yourself to work every day because of a health problem, like, I just heard recently, like, you have a million problems until you have a health problem, and then you have one.
Yeah.
So I think awareness around that stuff is super important, especially for marketers to realize that you got to take care of yourself and the environment that you're in, curating your environment. Like, I'm moving houses right now, so I'm like, how can I be very diligent around the environment that I'm putting myself in? Because when you move to a new place, it's a really good time to curate good habits and be very conscious of the environment that you're putting yourself in. So yeah, man, I love that. Obviously, I've been supportive of that, being in the hearing loss club, shout out to all of our hearing impaired friends out there. If you have hearing aids, you're my people. But
well, I mean, not to get on a super personal thing, but I have a hearing disorder myself, right? So, and you and I have a little bit of a relativity there. And a really good friend of mine, Bill Schiffmiller, always does this exercise with his clients about shut your eyes for 5 seconds. What do you see, right? And you can see all sorts of things. He's like, okay, shut your ears. You can't.
Right.
So that is the one part of your senses that you can't plug off. And you can try, but it's just an inconvenience to do it, and you can close your eyes, you can plug your nose, you can, close your mouth, whatever. You don't have to touch something. But if sound's going on around you, you really can't shut that down. And it's the same thing with retail, and for me, with my own hearing stuff that I've dealt with over the years, I've always had to study people's face and watch their lips and really lock in. It's made me a better communicator. I'm actually grateful for it.
Yep.
But I couldn't imagine working retail when I have the newest Taylor Swift song blasting in my ear when I'm trying to have a conversation with somebody, and they're probably upset because they just want to buy this thing and go home. You know what I mean? So all we're trying to do is to shed light on why noise can be a problem for retailers and brands and restaurants and whatever, and how it could actually help them convert the customer better if you just think about it more intuitively.
Yeah.
Because, I think over the next 30 years or so, there's going to be 2.3 billion people that are hearing impaired. 2.3 billion. A third of the earth, or at least a fourth of the earth, is going to have a problem very similar to what you and I have. And guess what? They like to shop too.
Yeah.
So you got to think about them. So these are the things that we're trying to get ahead on. We're trying to be early about.
Yeah, it's all one in the weeds, man. Well, listen, man, I think a good place to land the plane is a lot of people will be listening. They'll see a resume like yours. They'll see you as a person, and they'll view you as successful. Whether that, I know we all have imposter syndrome about our own careers or things that we've accomplished, but a lot of marketers, they'll see a resume like yours, like you have a job now where you can be creative. You're in-house at a really good company. You've worked at past roles where you've gotten a lot of on-the-job experience. I think stability is, stability is never really guaranteed, but in terms of what it looks like, I would say you most model that in terms of the role that you have. So if you were, say, an early 20-some marketer in Columbus, or even have, at any age even, what advice could you give to someone who's, kind of navigating their career? They haven't landed in a role that they're deeply proud of, that they haven't embodied yet. What wisdom can you give to marketers, especially locally, who are kind of finding their way?
There's so much advice that I would offer. First off, if you're in school and, you did this really well, and I tried to do this same thing, just to get as much experience as possible before you graduate. Try and work, or try and intern, or try and do whatever, even if there's something that the school offers. You know what I mean? Because that's going to help you out. Now, if you've already graduated, you need to start building a personal brand. And as part of that personal brand, you got to think about, what does my resume look like and how does it read? Do I have a portfolio? If I don't have a portfolio, I need to build one. I need to create work or work examples or things that inspire me. You know what I mean? You have to find as many different things that can separate you from your competition when you're trying to build out what your personal brand and how you present yourself in interviews, or how you present yourself when you're going after these roles that you want. And the other thing is, just be assertive. You got to have a little bit of a hustle in you to go after these brands that you want to work for. Or the companies that you're interested in. I fell into retail design completely unintentionally, but then I found an opportunity at Chute Gerdeman, and I sought after it, and I worked hard to go get it, and I networked, and I think I went through 4 rounds of interviews, and I prepared as much material as I could to land that gig. And it's definitely been an amazing part of my career to this point. But I think if you're looking for it and you're trying to get there, just see yourself in that role and prep up everything that you can to make yourself the strongest personal brand that you can have.
Yeah, it's like, be valuable, man. Like, it's maybe slightly controversial to say, but like, you have to be valuable to the role that's being presented, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in-house. Like, just be valuable in any way that you can, and now you're in a position to where they trust you with a lot of creative decisions, whereas I imagine they wouldn't have done that when you first got there. So if like marketers are looking at your career, like I think a big lesson that they can learn is that be valuable, prove your skill set, go deep on the topics that you're passionate about, that the brand is also passionate about, and be indefensible as an asset. I mean, that's something that I've learned just in the short time that I've known you. And until our next podcast, that'll be something that I'm always thinking about. So, listen, man, this has been awesome. Until round 3, or we come on each other's podcasts again. Where can marketers go if they want to stay in touch with you, reach out, Chute Gerdeman, anything else you got going on that you want to plug?
Yeah, I think, I'm a professional musician at night, so that's my side gig. So, I play in a couple bands. I play in a country band with a guy named Alan Carl. So if you're into country and you want to check us out, we play all around Ohio. We play all over the place. I also am in a metal band with an artist named Doobie, and he is all over Columbus as well. So we've been on tour and stuff of that nature. So if you're watching us remotely in a different state, there's probably a good chance I've been in your state and jammed out with you. So I just better catch you at the next one. But outside of the musician thing, you can catch up with me on LinkedIn, Instagram too. Max Miller 614 is my handle. And yeah, one of the things that I always try to do is open up my inbox to anybody that wants to have a conversation about career or wants to have a conversation about marketing or whatever they're passionate about. If you want to hit me up and you want to talk about fragrance or cologne or whatever, you can do that too. But I love talking to people that nerd out over the same things that I nerd out over, or learning what people nerd out over so that I can start to invest my time in it and, maybe become a hobbyist in that too. I'm always finding the next thing to go an inch wide and a mile deep in. So yeah, those are the things that I would plug right now.
Yeah, dude. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, Matt.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks. Awesome.